ones. And yeah, so we'll keep the old ones up until the new ones are rebuilt, and then we'll put the new ones in like within a day or two.
All right, that sounds awesome.
It does.
So I would like to go ahead and make a motion for the board to approve this project.
This is Lori Wertz. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I think this is a great project also. It'll really be an improvement. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Dylan, you're set to go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item B, presentation, discussion, consideration, snowmobile access on the Sugar River Trail. Sam, are you on?
I am, Roger. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Sam Landis, and I represent the Dane County Snowmobilers with the Association of Wisconsin Snowmobile Club since 1991. Past executive director of the AWSC, and I'm current legislative committee chairman. I'm also a citizen member of the Governor's Snowmobile Recreational Council. I have been since 2003, and I'm currently that law enforcement committee chair. We're talking about snowmobile use on the trail extension from the Sugar River Trail crossing south, and I'll get into that. It's not uncommon to run sections of a snowmobile trail on a paved surface that is snow covered like this trail extension. It is not the intention or the requirement of our program to dictate the trail surface at all, including asphalt. The DNR has the ability to use a paved surface and allow snowmobiling on sections of trails. For whatever reason, the DNR has created this issue where we've existed for over 30 years. According to my past discussions with both officials from the village and the town of New Glarus, there's really been no issues with our use in any case. If issues arise and any legitimate damage is done, we'll work together with the village to rectify this or any situation. As indicated in your resolution R2008, per our communication that I sent out Monday, the current route does not require any state right-of-way exemption at all and is in compliance with village ordinances. The department has never maintained the paved extension, up until now hasn't needed it. There's no way that we could run a safe and legitimate route on snow in the current right-of-way without infringing on the paved trail surface down to Culvers. The core of the issue is that the DNR's current draft of the new Southwest Savannah Master Plan currently does not allow snowmobile use south of the Sugar River Trail crossing of Highway 69 on that trail extension. The plan is set to go in front of the Natural Resources Board at their December meeting for approval. If approved, any snowmobiler that infringes on the paved portion of that trail extension could be subject to a $232 fine. This includes those accessing Casey's, the Swiss Air Hotel, the Beer House, Culver's, and the Co-op Station. We also saw this past season that many local residents ride their sleds from the west end of the village along County H onto that section of the trail to access the snowmobile trail system. They would be subject to that fine as well. Therefore, it's really possible that the future conflict could be created for the village in a scenario that never has in the past. Snowmobilers that want to access all the businesses south of the Sugar River Trail 69 crossing safely on a snow-covered surface along the highway right-of-way could be subject to fines or forced to run in unsafe conditions on bare pavement with snow design machines, or would just make the decision to leave. We sure feel it's in the village's best interest to rescind resolution R2008, to support snowmobile use on the trail extension south of Highway 69 at Culvers, and quite frankly, should be down to County H for access by village residents. This will help us in trying to regain use on the extension in the DNR's Southwest Savannah Master Plan. Again, Roger, I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity, members of the board. I'll do my best to answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Sam. Does anyone have any questions of Sam?
This is Henry. I suppose I definitely want to hear what our police think about it.
Yeah, Mike, I guess from the police department, Chief Burke Oldebuck here. The question that I have is if the trail was open down to Culver's or to H as you request, how would the residents access that if they're not allowed on the village streets? Because that's what you said, Mr. Landis, would it be accessible for the village residents to get to the trail from that south branch of it, from the crossing down to Culver's and, as you requested, possibly up to H. But my question would be, how would the residents access the trail, say south of Culver's, between H and Culver's?
Well, I guess that's a village thing, Chief, but we saw tracks from residents up and around, behind and around the school back there. And the tracks that I saw were off the traveled portion of County H, far enough that I don't think it was an issue. You know, but all I can tell you is that we saw it. So it's happening. Now, whether that's illegal with the village, I guess that's up to you folks. I mean, you basically adopted the Wisconsin state statutes in your ordinances. So if a person crosses the road and uses and is more than 10 feet off the traveled portion of County H going over to the Sugar River Trail, technically with access, they could do that as I understand it. So we're not asking for something more. All I'm stating is what we saw.
Right, I know historically over the last 10 years that I've been here as a chief and my lieutenant's been here 20 years, historically, there's not a lot of snowmobiles being operated on a village streets. I mean, granted, we get a heavy snowfall. I'm not saying that there isn't somebody goes whizzing through the village or goes here or goes there where we can't operate our squad cars anyway or do anything about it. I mean, quite honestly, that's what it comes down to. They know that and we know that, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But those are far and few between. But that was really my question. When you promoted the use of it, you said that it would be accessible for the village residents, but currently the operation of snowmobiles on the village streets would be prohibited. And that's, I guess, what I wanted to bring up to the board and the members, that, you know, so nobody thinks it's a green light just because that gets approved, that they can go racing through the village to get to the trail. And quite frankly, there's really no place to park down there to launch a snowmobile. You know, somebody comes up from Illinois with a car and a trailer, between H, Culver's, the gas stations, and that whole area, there really isn't any place for them to offload snowmobiles, to park, to get on, to access the trail. So the only benefit that I would see from the police department perspective would be allowing them to go to Culver's to eat, or the gas stations to get something, or the beer house, or the hotel. And I can also say this, is quite honestly, even though it may be illegal to do that, the police department has always used great discretion and more or less, I don't want to say look the other way, but basically look the other way while they went to Culver's. You know, 3 or 4 of them go down there to get a sandwich or something like that. I mean, we've never really been heavy or anti-snowmobile enforcement on it. But I just wanted to clarify the way you made it sound before, that it would be readily available for all the residences, because that would not be true.
Right. And I apologize if my wording was wrong, but we did see some tracks. When I was down there looking this past winter, we saw some tracks along H up towards the high school. Looked to be 10 feet off the travel portion of the road. So, I mean, I'll leave the village situation to you folks, but to be honest with you, the only real time there's a legal concern on that whole deal, you can legally ride 10 feet off the traveled portion of the roadway during the day. The only time the 40-foot rule comes in effect is at night. And the only we looked at that because we could have rectified that situation if it would have been a problem by crossing the highway at Culver's and running up the other side of the highway. But Chief, to be honest with you, about the only time we saw travel during hours of darkness was over to the hotel. And you have a lot of room over there, and I think you're well past the 40 feet. So the big deal is that no matter what you do between Casey's and Culver's, you're going to infringe on that, on the paved portion of the trail. And it's always been snow covered. We don't need to drop off. I'm up here between Dane and Springfield corners, and my family, I got 4 sleds. We love to run down there all the time. It's a beautiful 2.5-hour ride from Madison.
Yeah,
Eric Gobley here. If I can just interject a little bit here, you know, I own the Swiss Air Motel and the Glarus Beer House, and I've been here 15 years. And there's been years when we've had good snow. And we've had a lot of snowmobilers. They've always parked their trailers in the parking lot and unloaded. I've seen them next door at the bank with trailers unloading on any given day or weekend. The parking lot at the chamber, you'll see plenty of trucks and trailers unloading snowmobiles. You know, and over the last 15 years, you know, just even the local traffic running up and down 69 with their snowmobiles, I've never seen any damage. There's never been any problems. You know, for these snowmobile trails, which in the winter is a lot of it can potentially be a lot of revenue for the village and businesses. To have that section of 69 open would be, you know, pretty important, because I have a lot of guests that come up for the trails. They park here. How do they get to the trail if they can't use that section of the pavement?
This is Peggy. I have a couple questions, and I apologize if I don't know everything about snowmobiling within the village, even though I should. What is the speed limit to ride within the village on a snowmobile? Is it 25?
no, they're not allowed at all, Peggy, on the village streets.
No,
isn't-
I mean on the, not on the streets, but on the trail, like when they're coming into town.
And I have to admit, go on record, that the police department is probably not 100% up on the laws as much as Mr. Landis is. Not being a snowmobile background, I can tell you, you know, what the village ordinance kind of pertain, but as far as the right of ways and this and that for the state trails, he's going to be the expert on that, not the police department.
Yeah, I just wondered how fast. Well, here's in a nutshell, these are some of my concerns. And Eric, maybe you could attest to that. My one concern is having a hotel, and the noise pollution. Does that seem to be a problem? Are snowmobilers people who, you know, park their sleds early in the day and move on? The other question I have is, one is the noise pollution. The other one is the speed limit. And my concern for people who do, which would be myself, walk those trails sometimes often at night. And so that would be a concern too. Is there anyone that can answer or address those two issues?
I'll take a shot at it, Peggy. According to state law, anybody that comes within 100 feet of a person not on a snowmobile must do so at 10 miles an hour.
Okay.
But you have to take a look at the group of people that you get down in New Glarus. You know, it's a very family-friendly ride. You see a lot of families down there on weekends that travel down into that area. Also, once you cross the Sugar River Trail and you head south on the trail extension, there's a lot there. You have driveways to cross, inlets to cross. Nobody wants to get hurt, and we just haven't seen anybody really ripping down there at high speeds because of the intensity of the trail location. So I can tell you, I've been representing snowmobilers since 1991. I've been executive director of the AWSC since 1998. Very good friends with the 3 clubs in that area. And we just haven't gotten, Eric and I were talking about it, and I was talking to Roger about a little bit. We're just not getting complaints. And if there are complaints, we'll co-op with the village police department and the local DNR wardens. If we start having issues, we got ways to enforce.
Hey,
And-
this is Jeff from the police department. I would agree with Sam. We get very little complaints on the snowmobiles and their speed. Last year, the only thing we had to do was the snowmobiles would park in that grassy terrace there that the Fat Cat Cafe owns. And we had to post that last year, no parking, because they would park their sleds there and they would run. And then the fumes would go into Fat Cat through their exhaust fan. But we put some no parking signs there and some caution tape for Ann and John. And that took care of the problem, and everybody obeyed it. They didn't, knock it down and keep parking there and everything like that. So on the police department, we have very, very minimal complaints. I know last year we had a couple complaints of people on 2nd Street over in that H area, flying through there at times when we got snow. And that might be the tracks that Sam was talking about. We were trying to track those people down.
Eric Goldley here. If I could comment on a couple of things. Peggy, you asked about the motel and noise pollution. I've never had a complaint at the motel about snowmobiles. They're far enough away from the guest rooms that it's never been an issue. No more than semi trucks, Jake breaking down 69 like they do. It can get loud out there, but I've never had a noise complaint in the summer or the winter. As far as the speed limit and them at night, with the liquor store and now tap room, I've spent a lot of time looking out the window. For the most part, I've never seen them, going at a really high rate of speed, because besides my property, the longest stretch they have is a city block before they come to another intersection, because of 11th or 12th and 13th and the streets that come to 69. So they can only speed up so much before they have to slow down before they cross the highway.
I can attest to the adverse of that. In fact, behind the Lawn House, I see them exceeding 10 miles an hour before they get over to the trail. So my experience is actually kind of the adverse of Eric's here. And I am familiar with some people who could come and complain about the noise of those units as well. So I guess I'm hearing the other aspect of it.
But my understanding is that area is so the only area that's looked at being stopped is the area from south of the trail. So like from the depot to the trail is still gonna be open for snowmobilers, but now they're gonna stop maintaining the area from the trail south to Culver's. Is that the problem?
Snowmobiling is on the Sugar River Trail, snowmobiling is listed as a use on the Sugar River Trail, has been in the past, is in the current master plan. The Snowmobile Trail Aids program had a big hand in acquiring the Sugar River Trail. So yes, the Sugar River Trail down to 69 and crossing the highway from east to west will maintain snowmobile use.
This is Henry. I think I live closer than anybody else in the village to the Sugar River Trail. Last winter, there is noise, and yeah, obviously there's some people who always go over 10 miles an hour, and I saw, I don't know how many, but it was fairly common. But it does bring a lot of revenue. I don't think it's any reason to condemn them. I don't think anyone was hurt last winter. So I mean, I guess I'm right now I'm kind of in support of this, but I don't think the noise would be anything big. There's fewer residents down that way.
But I'm confused. That's not the area, Henry, that they're talking about not allowing snowmobiling anymore. The only area they're talking about is
Yep.
south of the Sugar River Trail, correct?
Yep, yeah, so they can access culverts and everything else.
Why are they choosing to stop that area and not, I'm confused as to why they're picking just south of the Sugar River Trail and not north through because it's not Sugar River Trail? Is that why?
No, that's already being used, to my understanding. We're just adding it. You know, they have to turn onto the trail.
Correct.
I think what's being proposed is that they continue on down, even though they have to cross the road in several intersections, but to give the snowmobilers access all the way down the culvert so they can access all of those businesses.
So they're currently not allowed to do that, or they currently are, but they're proposing not allowing to do that?
To my understanding,
Tammy,
it's not.
Can I interject? Can I interject for a second? For 30 years, since that trail was paved, snowmobilers have used that section. So the snowmobiling's legal on the Sugar River Trail. We've been using since the paved trail went into the right of way of the highway, and that's the topic. We've been using that trail as access as buildings were built down to the co-op and down to the culvers. What happened was in 2019, fall of 2019, that trail is one of the heaviest traveled trails in the state of Wisconsin. It's part of Trail 21. That trail starts in Albany and goes all the way up to Ashland, Wisconsin, folks. So the trail use down here the past 5 to 10 years has really picked up. The bridges were in bad shape. So I ended up in New Glarus, looking at the 2 bridges on the brewery property, which are going to be replaced. We're replacing all the structures between Verona and in through New Glarus. So when the Southwest Savannah Master Plan came up, that trail extension is part of the DNR, is a co-op agreement between the DNR and the DOT. So they're now going to account for it in the master plan. All I asked the department in the fall of 2019 was to make sure the language was included in the master plan so that we could use the trail extension, continue to use the trail extension from the 69 crossing down to the businesses.
Right.
Somehow or other, that's when the DNR, not the village, not the snowmobilers, for some reason, the DNR made that an issue. And I don't understand why, because we've done so virtually without complaint for 30 years. So what we're trying to do, Tammy, is get that language put back in the master plan. And to do so, it would really help to have the village's support.
This is Chuck. This is Tammy. So currently, we are letting that happen and have let that happen for the last several years, the snowmobilers to go down that, and we've not had major issues, is kind of what I've heard. Is that correct?
From the way we understand it, the trail extension up until the new master plan was starting to be written a couple of years ago was part of the Sugar River Trail. The extension was considered part of the Sugar River Trail. So that use in our mind was allowable. It was perfectly legal. So
okay.
all we wanted to do in the future, Tammy, is make sure the language was correct. That's when the issue started.
Okay, I get it.
Chuck, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I think we've skipped over the basic point of why this came up, and the basic point of the resolution of 31720, which was the actual maintenance of the trail. And I don't have any feelings about that one way or the other, but we haven't even discussed that. And that's why this whole thing, if you look back at the resolution, it was about maintenance. And the DNR's at this point, I don't know, supposed refusal to maintain the pavement from the crossing south if the snowmobiles degraded it. I don't know if that's actually an issue. I do know that when we discussed this back in, frankly, the minutes for that meeting are missing online. I don't know if they exist anywhere else. But it was the threat of the DNR not maintaining the pavement if it was degraded due to snowmobiles. I don't even know what that means. But at that same time, at that same meeting, my concern was the safety of snowmobiles from the crossing down to Culvers, crossing numerous in drives and two village streets at times when there may be high snowbanks, snowmobilers having big helmets on, people quickly turning in to those in drives, and the possibility of catastrophic circumstances. And that hasn't been brought up here at all. It's just been, I don't know why, but my feeling is right now that since we have received this on the basis of a memorandum, letter, whatever you want to call it, from legal counsel for the Snowmobile Association, that we might best table or postpone this matter until we consult our own legal people to make sure that all the issues are covered. That's it.
Can I comment, Drake? All I can tell all the folks on the call is we've been doing it for 30 years. The local village police force hasn't had a real issue with it. I haven't gotten any complaints. Talking to the business people, talking to Eric, they've heard no complaints. I talked to Billy Franzek over at Sugar River Power Sports. It's not something that we're asking that's new. We're asking to make sure the language is proper so we continue to do something that we've been doing for 30 years. That paved trail is 30 years old. And, the only thing you can see on it is that it's worn and out of joint because it's 30 years old. There isn't really any other damage done to it from what we can see.
Well, I don't think that's the issue. You've been doing it for 30 years. Maybe not, but what about the safety issue, number one? And I'm not saying that the use of snowmobiles on the trail degrades it, because obviously from the depot down to the crossing, where it is paved, we know the status of that. But there has been the issue was originally brought up last year due to maintenance, the possibility of having to maintain the trail if there was possible degradation. That's number one. And number two, I think the bigger issue is safety. The safety of all concerned for all the crossings, driveways, street crossings down to Culvers. And I'm not saying that I'm for or against the extension of the use. I just think we need a little more input I don't think a couple of weeks to look into this. We as a board have had this information for approximately, I don't know, Drake, you can tell me, 3 or 4 or 5 days. I don't feel that's sufficient time for me to consult with various people's concerned as to their opinions on this. So all I'm saying is, I think it would be the wisest course to postpone, at the very least, postpone this until our next regular meeting.
I'm fine with that. Sam, do you have any idea why they would cease to maintain the pavement on that part of the trail? The DNR, have they given any indication as to why?
Because well, they explained that last year, Tammy.
Well, I
They don't want,
vaguely remember this.
because they don't want to spend the money, obviously, and neither do we. But we don't even know if that's an issue.
Okay.
You know, if we don't know, Mr. Landis is right. We don't know if there is actual degradation. I mean, obviously the thing is covered with snow or people wouldn't be driving snowmobiles on it, right?
Correct.
If it gets down to bare pavement, I would guess anybody with any sense wouldn't be driving these so-called sleds up and down that area. But I think the bigger issue now is general safety for the snowmobilers and the businesses and public alike. And I right now I don't have a yes or no feeling on that, but I'd sure like to know more. And I understand. I would love to give our businesses farther down the line the opportunity, and the snowmobilers the opportunity to go to these businesses, but I don't think we've looked into that part of it far enough. I mean, we've got this 14 pages of information from whoever with a letter from a law firm, which, by the way, sort of grates against the small town government, in my opinion. But all I'm asking is that we let this settle at least for a couple of weeks. We've got another meeting in 2 weeks. There won't be any snow flying, hopefully, by then.
Chuck, do you want to make a motion to postpone it till the next meeting then?
I will make the motion to postpone this discussion until the next regular meeting of the village board.
Chuck, this is Peggy. Would you want to add that we seek some legal advice, or?
Yeah, I think just because we have this letter from DeWitt law firm, I think it's our responsibility to check into the legal end from our side. So yes, I would. I don't know that needs to be part of the motion, but I think it could be. I think Drake can take care of that.
I would also like a representative from the DNR to be present at our next meeting when we discuss this.
I think that's at the most, that would be great. Or if we would have some concrete information from the DNR. What we have now is, well, we'll monitor it, we'll look into it. If something happens, well, that's pretty meaningless, right, Mike?
Right. So, I'm sure you and I are both on the same agreement that we're kind of getting tired of people trying to do things and not being here to represent themselves or anyone. It's getting tedious now. So
everybody needs to take their stand.
Yes,
like we do.
Well, and I apologize.
Okay,
Chuck.
is there a
I will
Is
second.
there a second to Chuck? Is there a second to Chuck's motion?
Yeah, this is Henry. I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion second. Any further discussion for postponing it till the next meeting? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll probably hear from you in a couple of weeks, Sam.
Thanks so much, Roger, and thanks to the board.
Okay. Have a good night, Sam.
Take care.
Okay. Item C, discussion consideration ordinance 21-06, annexation of new electrical substation land.
This ordinance provides for the annexation of the lands recently purchased for the new electric substation. Once adopted, the land will be a part of the village's corporate limits. While it is not contiguous with the current village boundary and will create an island of village property within the town, this is allowed for municipally owned utility property. Since the zoning of the property was determined as part of the extraterritorial zoning area, that information is included in the ordinance as well. The ordinance was drafted in consultation with village legal counsel, and staff is recommending approval.
Well, this is Tammy. I make a motion to approve the annexation.
This is Henry. I'll second that.
Okay, Lynn, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Michael Bell,
Yes.
Henry Janish,
Yes.
Peggy Cruz,
Yes.
Tammy Newberry,
Yes.
Chuck Phillipson. Chuck Phillipson, Chuck? Welcome back.
Sorry, I muted. Yes.
Okay. Roger Trutman,
Yes.
Lori Wertz,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Item D, discussion consideration ordinance 21-07, village ward map.
Lynn, can you run them through this one?
Sure. This, the map it's part of what they do when the census is completed. And the county is kind enough to actually look at this and consider the numbers in all our census tracts to come up with the wards. Nothing has changed dramatically from the previous. We still have 4 wards within the village, and 1 and 2 are represented by 1 supervisory county board member, and 3 and 4 are a separate county board member. We haven't gotten further information about Senate seats and that kind of thing to determine if that's going to change anything. But for the wards for the village, this will be it. Mostly, I think most of the changes came from Ward 1 moving into Ward 2. There was a few little blocks that moved, and between 3 and 4, there was some adjustment done. That will all be taken care of for the voters through WISVote. Once we approve these ward maps, then WISVote takes care of all that, so people don't need to re-register or anything. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there any discussion on this village ward map?
Is there some action required?
Yes, we would
Yeah, we
need,
need a motion to approve.
And do we have any choice?
well, unless you.
No, the county pretty much said it all, I think, Chuck.
Yeah.
I would move we approve the,
This is Peggy. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
All
I,
right.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, discussion consideration. Resolution 2115, providing for the sale of approximately $3,695,000 in water and electric system revenue bonds. Drake?
I will turn this over to our financial advisor, Dave Ferris with Ellers.
Drake, did you want me to share my screen, or do you just want me to say what page number I'm on? What's best?
They have all the information in their packet, so they should be able to follow along.
Okay. All right, so I'm looking at the pre-sale report for the 3,695,000 water and electric system revenue bonds. As always, we're presenting a report which basically documents the planning that's gone into bringing this issue before you for approval to take to the market for sale. We've gone through quite a few iterations with the how to fund this, how we should take into account the Alliant and the ATC monies, and we believe that we've come to the way that the village and the other consultants involved feel is the most appropriate way to fund this project. So I'm going to go on to the first page of the report, which is executive summary of proposed debt. Like we said, it's a 3,695,000 water and electric system revenue bonds. They're going to be sold to fund the electric system capital improvements, which is, I believe, your substation. As far as how we've had this structured for sale, basically because of the 20-year repayment, the call date is typically out about 10 years. So we're making the first call date May 1st of 2031, and that it gives you the ability to refinance these if the rates are better than they've been for the last year or so, or if for some reason you have money in hand that you may be able to pay some of these down. So on May 1st of 2031, you have the opportunity to refinance or pay down some of that debt before you put some more, before you potentially would go out further with any better interest rates at that point. My guess is the way the interest rates are today that you may not refund this debt unless you have cash on hand. Let's see, as far as the rating, I did talk to Lynn and Drake a little bit about the village's rating, and I think maybe the next time we do a borrowing, we'll talk about doing that. Typically, a utility is like a 1 notch below the village, so we don't recommend rating at this point. But we may take a look at where the village may end up. Maybe we could get an A1 rating, and that would help your interest rates. But typically, like I said, if it's 1 notch before, that's an A2, and that's as good as being non-rated. So we don't think you should spend money on asking somebody to rate you when it doesn't save you anything. Basis of method of sale, we're going to take this into the open market like we have with past issues. We're going to have local, regional, and national underwriters take a look at your financials and see if they want to bid on it, and hopefully we'll do as good as we've done in the past where we have a decent amount of participants. On page 3, sorry, I haven't been telling you, Drake, or whoever's running the show here. Let's see, we've got, I don't think we have anything on that page that I need to bring up, so let's go on to the next one. Investment of bond proceeds, I kind of talked to staff a little bit about that. Obviously the more interest you make on bonds, when you hold those, the less you might have to take out in proceeds. Interest rates aren't great, so Lynn was going to look in to see whether there was a good place to tuck the money for the holding period while you're constructing. So risk factors, the only really big risk factor is that if the village or the electric and water utility doesn't have enough revenues, that the village may be required to cover that shortfall with tax levy. I believe that based on the analysis that we've done for the staff, that your coverage ability to pay your debt is in good shape, and with the funds coming in from ATC and Alliant, that'll give you a little more ability to pay that debt, since that'll be what that is for. Other service providers is obviously your bond counsel is Quarles and Brady. Your paying agent is Bond Trust Services, and the village converted to having Bond Trust do paying agent on all issues, just because it protects the village from missing any kind of payment, which can reflect bad on your bond rating, and it's just a good insurance policy. On page 5, The calendar of events a little bit off because after I had prepared this, we have actually, instead of well, I'm here today doing the pre-sale report, but instead of a due diligence call run by Ellers, Quarles and Brady will be doing I'm trying to think, a disclosure counsel service for you that will make sure, they do a really good job of making sure that your official statement, which is what you use to take to the market to have something for underwriters to review, make sure that it's really in good shape and has covered all your bases, dotted your I's, crossed your T's. So that'll be kind of a little bit of a change, but should happen about the same time. The official statement will come out before the sale so the underwriters can review your information. And then we'll be back on November 2nd to let you know how the sale went and hopefully bring you some good news about the rates and how the underwriters bid on your bonds. So, and then on November 18th is when you would close. Quarles will work with the underwriter that won the bid, and that's the day you'll receive your funds into your checking account or wherever you'll hold it. Just to kind of go over the spreadsheets quick on page 6. This is our sources and uses schedule. So the project is about 3.4 million. There is an amount that has to be held separately for basically a debt service reserve, which is a requirement of revenue bonds. That amount is 393,000 about. Currently with the bonds you have in hand, it's about 190,000 that you have on hand to apply to that. So you're borrowing for the difference on that. So that's a different thing for revenue bonds. You don't see that for GO. Then you have your issuance expenses that are anticipated. Some of them are estimates at this time and will change on sale day. The big one that will change usually is the underwriter fees, where the underwriter actually uses that amount to win the bid. So not only do they bid on the interest rate, but they may reduce that amount enough that we can downsize the issue. And I think if some of you have been around in the past, we typically have a good track record of downsizing the issue, so it doesn't actually end up at the 3.695. We will probably come in lower than that, especially if we get enough, a good bid out of it. The next schedule on page 7 is the schedule we look at for coverage, and that means, do you have enough money to pay not only your operation and maintenance, but also your debt payments? So what you need to have is at least your debt payments need to be, your revenues need to be 1.25 bigger than your total debt payments. And that's the minimum amount that the village can have on its revenue bonds. And as you can see from the third column from the right, we're anticipating after the new issue that you'll be somewhere around 1.5 or greater. And as I said earlier, ATC and Alliant, once we actually have that locked in and we're receiving money, I believe that goes into this calculation. So that should improve that coverage capacity as well. So that should make it look a lot better. We're required to use the audit, and unfortunately, we haven't started collecting money from them, so we have to use those past numbers to come up with a schedule. The page 8 and 9 and 10 are really support for that coverage schedule that kind of shows you not only your where I'm getting the numbers from to get the revenues on the left side of the report, but also the new debt payment schedule, the old debt payment schedules all flow into that schedule. And then the last thing in the packet is page 11, which just kind of shows you the interest rates just keep going along, and we really haven't had any drastic changes in those rates. So hoping that they continue to stay where they are, and in a month from now I have some really pretty good news for you. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. I'm happy to repeat something if I went too fast. That's kind of a thing I do sometimes.
I thought it was good. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on this? Otherwise, we'd need a motion to approve.
I would, this is Chuck. I'd just like to at the risk of being repetitious, this is something we have to do, and do we have any choice?
Right.
We're pretty far along in the process. I would not advise the village board not to proceed.
This is Tammy. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'm Michael Bell, second.
That's for resolution 2115, right, Tammy?
Correct. I would like to make a motion to approve resolution 2115, providing for the sale of approximately 3,695,000 water and electric system revenue bonds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one question.
Roll call, please, Lynn.
Just Roger.
Oh,
Just
okay, go ahead.
What does approximately $3,695,000 mean?
Well, typically in your general obligation resolutions, they're not to exceed. And so in the case of a revenue bond, there isn't that cap. So if something happens where it needs to vary around that number, you're not held to it. So something would have to happen to cause that to go up. And like I said, you know, in all likelihood, you'll go down. That's just the way the revenue bond resolutions have. That's the way revenue bond resolutions are done by bond counsel. It isn't a way to move it up. It's just that's how revenue bond resolutions are written.
So it's the old give or take a couple million.
It's not going to be a couple million unless Drake comes up with a heck of a lot of project costs.
I'm being facetious.
I think the one thing that Lynn, maybe you got kind of a whiff of from Bridget at Quarles the other day is they're kind of evaluating the Alliant and ATC relationship in this deal and whether this should be a taxable issue versus a tax exempt, and we have not heard back on their conclusion. And it's possible that the interest rates may be a little higher because of that. So I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that's maybe gives the revenue bonds a little bit of, in this case, a little bit of flexibility. I don't know if you've heard anything since, Lynn, have you?
No, I just got the information from the engineer this morning and forwarded it on to Bridget. So
Okay.
I know she has it and is taking a look.
Okay.
Okay, Lynn, I guess we can call the roll call.
Okay, I will start. Michael Bell.
Yes.
Henry Janish.
Yes.
Peggy Cruz.
Yes.
Tammy Newberry.
Yes.
Chuck Phillipson.
Yes.
Roger Trutman.
Yes.
Lori Wertz.
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in a
Thank
month.
you.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Item F, discussion consideration 2022 budget. Rick, have at it.
My budget memo is included in your packet that runs through a summary of the proposed budget that is before you. The typical challenges that we've continued to face over the years, net new construction came in at 1.72%, which is higher than it has been in the past, but it's still less than we would like to see. Levy limits continue to restrain our ability to raise additional revenue. And so largely, this budget largely, again, focuses on maintaining services. The largest investment in an expansion of service is a proposal or an opportunity, an option for the village board to consider to transition to a full-time police chief. So this proposed budget includes funding for a full-time police chief beginning July 1st, 2022, which is representing a $42,000 increase in the wage and fringe benefit line item of the police department as compared to 2021. In order to fully fund the position in 2023, an additional $11,000 would be required. So if it is included in this budget, it would be assumed that we will be making a commitment to fully fund for an entire year that change in the 2023 budget, which could conceivably take up a significant portion of any new revenue that we are able to obtain in 2023. As part of that proposal, if you go to, I believe it's the final page in your packet, I do have a supplementary memo solely on that, on the police chief budget initiative, which I can summarize for you. Essentially, there would be a full-time chief of police. This would be budgeted for 2,080 hours. We would, if this is the direction the village board would like to go, we would draft an employment agreement and discuss hiring options at that time. There is a reduction in budgeted hours of the part-time police secretary. The budgeted hours would be reduced from 1,200 hours to 1,040 hours. The 1,200 hours represents, that's the maximum amount someone who is a retired individual drawing a benefit from the Wisconsin retirement system is allowed to work without having to re-enter the system and therefore forfeit their benefit. 1,040 hours is half time. We looked at the historic number of hours worked, and it has not exceeded 1,000 hours over the past several years. So therefore, we're not predicting having a practical effect on the employee. This proposal also includes the hiring of an additional patrol officer to maintain the current patrol strength of the department, acknowledging that the police chief main focus will largely be on administration within the department. If there's any questions regarding the budget, Lynn and I are available to assist. Otherwise, I believe most of the items should be explained in my memo, but happy to answer any questions.
I just have a comment, Drake.
Yes, sir.
Chuck. We do, I spoke to you today, but we do have some potential changes in the Parks and Rec end of the budget, which we'll discuss next week at our regular Parks and Rec meeting. I think we've brought this up before. I just want to clarify that there may be some
regarding the revenue side with fees.
Regarding the revenue side with changes in fees. And so I just want everybody to be aware of that. We still have some work to do.
So does anyone have any questions or concerns about the budget to ask Drake or Lynn?
I would, I guess just to clarify, this is Chuck again. What would be the optimal time to plan on approving the proposed budget?
So formal approval. So by the next meeting in October 19th, we would probably at least like the village board to agree in concept of the budget, meaning that the board isn't intending to make any drastic changes to it, and that would be the budget that we would publish and put in the newspaper for our required notices for the public hearing on November 16th. Formal adoption of the budget cannot occur until after that public hearing, and so changes can occur following that public hearing. Obviously, if members of the public were to come to that public hearing and make a case for a budget initiative or funding elsewhere, the board, of course, would have the right to change the budget at that time as well. So the budget we do submit for publication does not have to be the budget that is adopted. Lynn, and it simply helps Lynn to make sure that in concept, that the village agrees that we should levy the full allowable amount, that they agree in general with the expenses as laid out and revenues following any additional discussion by committees prior to October 19th, and then obviously on October 19th or before, if the board wanted additional meetings to discuss the budget at all, to agree to this draft budget is close to the budget that the village board anticipates adopting and is comfortable essentially publishing it and submitting it to the public for their review prior to formal adoption. So October 19th, we would like to get that go ahead to publish the budget in the newspaper, and then formal adoption would occur following the public hearing on November 16th. The drop dead date, if you will, on when we have to submit a budget, we would really not want it to be any later than the very earliest in December, I believe. That probably gives Lynn some heartburn, but we have to submit it to the county to prepare the tax bills. So that would be the absolute latest that we would be able to approve the budget and be able to get it to the county in time for tax bills.
Thanks, Drake.
So would you want to schedule another budget meeting on the 19th?
I think that would be the appropriate. I mean, it would be on the agenda for the October 19th meeting, right?
Yes. Okay, so.
Does that require?
What do we want to do about item F? Just postpone it?
You don't have to take any action. We'll carry it over to the regular scheduled meeting on the 19th. So we wouldn't need any action on G as well, since it's a regular meeting. H, we would like to set the public hearing.
Yeah.
I would.
I guess we can just go ahead, whoever's speaking.
This is Chuck.
Go ahead.
If you would like to set that at this time, I would move that we set the budget public hearing for November 16th, 2021.
Lori, I'll second that.
Okay. So we're gonna have another budget meeting on the 19th, and then now you're making a motion to have the public hearing on the 16th of 2021 of November. Correct?
That's what I'm making the motion for. I'm assuming that's what Drake was seeking.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's what I
Okay,
have.
we have motion.
Yep, we have a
Pardon
second.
me?
We do have a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
on
I
this
got
one.
that. Yep. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. President's report. We had Tammy submitted a resignation to Drake and myself from resigning from the library board. So we need a motion to accept her resignation.
Chuck, so moved.
Whatever.
I'm sorry, we're talking over each other. So who's going to make the approval and who's making the second?
Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll second. That's Chuck.
Okay. Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item B, discussing consideration board member appointment to the library board. Henry Janisch has formally or verbally told me he would be willing to serve on the library board. Is that still a goal yet, Henry?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so we need a motion to appoint him to the library board.
This is Chuck. I'll make the motion to appoint Henry Janish to the library board.
I'm Michael Bell, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there anybody on the board have any comments about anything?
Thanks for stepping up, Henry.
Yeah, thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Hank.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, hearing nothing, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Got it.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.